when I was in high school, on our block, there was a boy named Greg. Um, he lived on the back side of the block, and his sister's name was Stacy. And their parents were sort of notorious for loud domestic disputes, if you know what I mean. And one day, Greg's mother, after shouting and cursing, threw a work boot through the picture window of their home and shattered it. And the next day, of course, Greg and Stacy still had to get on the school bus. And so when they got on the bus, all the kids in the bus went over to that side of the bus to look out the window to see the piece of plywood that had been nailed up over the window. And I remember that everyone was teasing Greg and Stacy and saying, "Your mom is a grizzly bear. She is so scary." And just teasing them, making fun of them. And I remember thinking, as insecure as I was, and some way still am, I think I would rather die than have the whole neighborhood talking about my mom and my dad and how they're not getting along and how they're fighting. It just was like a nightmare to me. And I remember thinking how embarrassing it must have been for Greg and Stacy to have that situation in their home. And now when I look back on it, I think, well, that's not even the half of it. It's the chaos, living in that chaos that would have been so difficult. Now, certainly we've all had experience with embarrassing moments in our families, our primary family, nuclear family, extended family. Nobody likes it. We don't like when there's fighting or when there's problems or when there's dysfunction. We don't like it. And we sure don't like it when it leaks out and everybody can see, oh, that house is really having problems. Sometimes my neighbors, I could hear they had 2 sons, and I would hear them get mad and start shouting, and it was just yikes. It's kind of out of control over there. Nobody likes it. It's embarrassing. Now, if you can put yourself in those shoes for a moment and just think about that, now you're in a proper frame of mind to understand the surprising power of the passage that we are looking at today and the incredible priceless treasure that it leads us to. So, let me just say that some of the simplest verses in the Bible turn out to be the most powerful and precious ones when it comes to practical, everyday living out of our faith. And the author of Hebrews, of course, is writing to Christians who are under a lot of pressure to give up their faith. They're going through a lot of problems, and there's a lot of pressure from the culture to give up their faith. And so, as you know, the author of Hebrews is holding up men, the great men and women of the faith, and holding them up as examples and saying, here are examples of people who lived by faith. Don't give up your faith. Follow these examples. So, today we're looking at a very simple verse, so short and simple that we might even pass right over it, but it really is one that gives great rewards to the person who's willing to look closely and just think about it. Especially noticing that it doesn't make any sense. So this is what the author says. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. Now, the reason this verse should immediately capture your attention or maybe even bother you is because if you know the story of the blessing of Isaac's sons, it doesn't seem at first to be a blessing that's especially filled with faith. If you remember, Isaac intended to bless the wrong one, right? He wanted to bless Esau. And the reason that he wanted to bless Esau is because Esau was the firstborn. They were twins, but he was the first one out. And not only that, but he just liked Esau better because Esau was sort of like, man's man. He's the outdoorsman. He's hunting. He's getting the wild game, which Esau really likes that. He wants to eat the wild game. So he wants to bless Esau. Not only that, but God has already spoken at the time of their birth that God had chosen Jacob, not Esau, to be the one through whom the blessing of Abraham would pass. Obviously, the blessing of Abraham got passed to Isaac, and now it's going to get passed to one of his sons, and God's already revealed that it's going to be to Jacob. And I looked it up. Abraham was still alive. So when that was revealed to Rebekah, that it's going to be the younger one that the blessing is going to go to, that would have been a great topic of talk in that family because Abraham was still alive for another 15 years after that. So this is very important. This is extreme. It's maybe the most important thing about this family is where is that blessing going to go? It's going to go through Jacob. Even Abraham knew it. It's going to be the second born. Now, how could Isaac overlook that important revelation? I don't know. Very interestingly, many commentators say this, that they notice that when the author of Genesis writes down that Isaac's eyesight was very poor, that it's almost like a veiled insinuation that his spiritual insight was not very great either. I saw that in a bunch of commentaries. He couldn't see the obvious. Esau had no interest in the things of God. The Bible tells us that Esau was a godless man who despised his birthright. In other words, he had no regard for this blessing of God that God had given to Abraham. I mean, we could say it like this: the most important thing in all of the world, Esau cares nothing about it. Who cares?
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So if that's true in what you said about Abraham being alive, then did Esau grow up, though, hearing that everything was going to come through Jacob anyway? So could that have been why he didn't have an interest? Because he felt like, well, it's already going through Jacob anyway.
Yeah, it's a good point. The reason I'm saying it is because it's public knowledge.
Right. That's
So-
what I mean. So he may have grown up hearing that and thinking, well, then what does it matter? Why should I be interested?
But he
Right.
wants it in this passage.
He wants his father's approval.
He wants it, right? And he feels bad that he lost his birthright too. No, it's really a good question. It's really, and obviously that's what goes into this. We're kind of looking at the whole thing. But remember that now Abraham's been dead for 25 years. So a lot of water's gone over the dam and stuff has happened. But it's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. So, but if you go back and just think about Esau, what he did with the birthright, and this would be after Abraham had died, he's like, I don't care anything about the blessing of Abraham. I'm starving. Give me the stew. So he is the kind of person who says, the things of God mean nothing to me. I would rather trade it all for a bowl of stew. And the Bible witness is clear, that's godless. He's despising the things of God, throwing them away. But as you know, if we're thinking about the dysfunction of this family, that's not the end of the story. If Isaac is playing favorites and showing favoritism towards his son Esau, Rebekah, she's doing the same thing with Jacob. It says that, Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And folks, let me tell you something. Rebekah is totally the brains behind this whole deception of helping Jacob to steal the blessing. He's even like, Mom, I'm not sure about this. I could end up being cursed for a stunt like this. That's what he says to his mom. And she's like, oh, never mind that, my dear one. Let the curse fall on me. Let's just make sure that you get the blessing. That's Rebekah for you. Laban's sister. This is what we see in her. But the neighborhood drama is still not over. Esau is not going to take all of this lying down. We know he is not going to take it without revenge. And so he resolves in his soul that as soon as his father dies, he is going to kill his brother Jacob. And so, folks, the reader at this point, our hearts are pounding because we recognize the similarity between Cain and Abel. Here we go again. So realizing that total disaster is at the door, Rebekah, again to the rescue. She says to Isaac, well, first she talks to Jacob. She's like, we got to get you out of here or Esau's going to kill you. But when she goes to talk to Isaac, what does she say? My life will not be worth living if your son Jacob does not, marries a Hittite woman like Esau did. Send him away so you can get a decent wife. And of course, Isaac does it. He sends Jacob away and he blesses him before he goes. Now, folks, even at a casual glance at this dysfunctional family causes us to say, if you're just reading it, frankly speaking, if you just are looking at this, you would want to say, why is the author of Hebrews holding up Isaac as an example who lives out a life of faith in regard especially to blessing his sons? Seemingly the focal point of the family meltdown is the blessing of the sons. How is that an example of great faith? That's what we're wondering. That's the tension of the passage. So the answer comes to us from Genesis chapter 27, which we read earlier. This is the moment when no sooner has Jacob departed after having tricked his father and having been blessed by him, that Esau arrives with the fresh venison stew that he has prepared, and Isaac discovers that he has been tricked by his son Jacob. All right, so let me read it to you. This is verse 33. Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me, and I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him, and he shall be blessed. Folks, this is what I want to say to you, and I think you can see it. This is the moment of truth in a person's life. You've probably had a moment of truth in your own life where you had to make a decision. This is a moment of truth. This is a very important moment in Isaac's life. We can all imagine, with no difficulty at all, a very angry father. Now, we've all seen it before. Who in the world hasn't seen an angry father freak out and do the wrong thing? Folks, that's just about as common as it comes. Everybody can look at their family and say, oh, yep, I've seen it. He's really angry, did the wrong thing. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Moonstruck, starring Cher in the role of, it's about an Italian woman who falls in love and is going to get married. And her name is Loretta in the movie. And her father, whose name is Cosmo, is having an affair. But his wife knows about it. And even Loretta found out by accident because she was going on a date. She went to the movies, and she saw her father with the other woman in the movie theater. So in the movie, there comes this scene where it's like a big family dinner. All the family, the extended family, is all sitting there. And Cosmo's wife, whose name is Rose, chooses that moment when the whole family is gathered around the table to say, never see her again. And of course, all the conversation stops. And Cosmo's sitting at the head of the table, and he's a great big man. And he gets up out of his chair, and he pounds the table with his fist. Everybody's plate jumps. And, you know, when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. Everybody knows what's coming now. And he goes, okay. And he sits down. So startling. Why is it so startling? Because it's the moment of truth. It'd be so easy for him to lie. Be so easy for him to blow up. Well, you do stuff, it's your fault anyway. None of that. Just, okay. And he sits down. It's the moment of truth. You've probably had something like that in your own life where you're about to boil over, but you kind of somehow, by the grace of God, you look out at things and you say, now wait a minute. I'm not doing that. I'm not lying. I'm going to just tell the truth. I'm just going to let the chips fall where they will. Folks, Isaac is not having an affair, but in the spiritual realm, something like this is happening. This is the moment, listen to me, this is the moment that Isaac realizes that God himself is overriding his will. Jacob will be the one who is blessed. Am I right? Isaac sees it. This is the moment he grasps it. This is the big turnaround in the heart and soul of Isaac when he understands God himself is choosing Jacob. God is saying to him, I choose Jacob. I didn't choose Ishmael. I chose you, Isaac. And I didn't choose Esau. I chose Jacob. I choose Jacob. And this is the moment. The trembling, the violent trembling, just like you yourself have had. This is the moment where he realizes, it's the moment of truth for Isaac, where he realizes God is insisting it will be through Jacob that the blessing passes. Look at Isaac. No ranting, no pounding of the table, no cursing of Jacob for what he did, no throwing a boot through the window, just this one simple sentence. I blessed him, and indeed, he will be blessed. We're looking at an incredible moment. So what does it mean? And what I want to do is give you three precious, practical lessons that we learn from the faith of Isaac. Number one is God does the choosing, therefore we have peace. All right? God does the choosing, therefore we can have peace. When you look at Isaac, you do not say to yourself, this man deserves the favor of God. He really was a shining example of faith. You don't say that. He's the epitome of the truth that God chooses us. God does not choose someone because they are better than someone else. This is a core belief in the Christian faith. It has been this way from the beginning. God made it clear to the nation of Israel, I did not choose you because you were the biggest nation. You were the smallest. You're the most pitiful, the most pathetic nation. So follow me in faith. Jesus says the same thing to his disciples and to us. He says to them, look, you did not choose me. I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit. Don't be thinking you're something great that I had to choose you. It was mercy, it was grace. That's how you got chosen. Only if God draws you are you able to accept Jesus. Only if God draws you are you able to choose Jesus. He has to choose you first. If you're a believer, there is nothing you could do to make God choose you in the first place. And therefore, listen to this, there is nothing you could do to have God reject you. If you've put your faith in Jesus Christ, you have utter peace in your soul because you didn't choose him. He chose you first, and he is not going to let you go. Folks, this is the engine behind all our desire to live a godly life. We're not living a godly life out of fear, mortal fear that will go to hell. If you believe in Jesus Christ, you've already been rescued from the flames of hell, and you belong to him forever. That's what gives you peace inside and totally motivates you to want to live a life of obedience more and more. Oh, don't you want your life to be a bright, shining testimony of the goodness of God, the grace of God in your life? Folks, it's only a matter of time before you make a big mistake in your life, like Isaac did, or like Cosmo did, or like any of the examples in our family. And if you think that your standing with God is conditional upon your performance, you will despair. When you blow it, you will despair. And guess what? You blow it on a daily basis. Maybe not a big one, but we blow it every day. You don't want to have despair every day. You want to be able to say, oops, I'm sorry, and move on. Receive the grace of God and move on with complete peace in your heart. Secondly, I hardly need to say it, but if you are a person of faith, that will mean that necessarily you are a person of humility. Let me say it like this. God does the choosing, so we have humility. We are people of humility. These two things go hand in hand. If you know that God has chosen you for salvation by grace, even though apart from grace you're completely disqualified, well then, if you're not humble, if you're not a very humble person, you're like a walking contradiction. Like if you're a person that's exuding like self-centered pride, and you say you're a Christian, there's a real problem there. It's like you're denying it's enormous grace that allowed you to be saved in the first place. Therefore, there's great humility in the heart of a believer, very great humility, because you understand the grace that was shown to you. Peter, after Peter denied 3 times that he was a follower of Jesus, one of the greatest blunders of all time, the greatest mistake that anybody could ever make, to disown Jesus. After Peter did that 3 times, Jesus said to him 3 times, Peter, do you love me? And the Bible tells us that Peter felt hurt because he asked him the 3rd time, do you love me? Now, what's that all about? Folks, that's all about humility. Did Peter have something to learn? Oh, yeah. He had a lot of pride. I'm the best disciple. Even if everybody else deserts you, I never will. Let me just tell you, Jesus, I got your back. No, it's not the way it is, Peter. You have got to come to grips with true humility. It is by grace that you are saved through faith. That's the only way you are saved. And therefore, that is why Peter could become such a powerful and great disciple, because he was truly humble. He knew from that point on that it was by the grace of God that he was saved. One time, I heard this story. Billy Graham was asked by a reporter what his opinion was on some hot button political controversy. And Billy Graham had his mouth open, and he had already said, well, I think, and Ruth Graham, his wife, kicked him under the table. And he stopped mid-sentence. And he said, it was painful. I mean, not just the kick, but being rebuked by his wife in a public setting. You know, she did it discreetly, but still, he had to stop what he was saying. But what happened was, he didn't take the bait. He didn't give his opinion on a hot button political issue. Instead, he seized the moment and steered the conversation back to the great truth that there is salvation through faith in Jesus Christ only. It's the only way of salvation. He was able to steer it back. Folks, that's humility. You can never do that if you're not humble. You got to be willing to be corrected. That's got to be a basic thing in your heart. Like, probably God is going to need to correct me today. Probably. I'm a fallen, sinful human being like everybody else. Probably God will have to teach me something today. It's very likely. So let me say it like this. This is what we learn from Isaac. God chooses, therefore we have peace, even when we blow it. Secondly, God chooses. God does the choosing, therefore every believer is humble. You know, we made mistakes in the past, we're going to make them again, but God's grace is big enough. And then lastly, God does the choosing. God chooses, God takes the initiative, therefore we can be very bold. All right, because it's God in the driver's seat, because God is the one who does the choosing. It's not somehow our own enterprise. Because it is God's enterprise, He's doing the choosing. We can be very bold, very confident and very bold. When Isaac says, I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed, what do we see here? The person who has put their faith in God's salvation is able to confidently share the blessing with others. Folks, the moment you know what God is doing, and you do know what God is doing through Jesus Christ, well, now you are able to be very bold. This is the moment that Isaac knows what God is doing. He suddenly sees it. He awakens to the fact that this is what God is doing. Indeed, we are all the more confident precisely because we have experienced the grace of God in the face of our worst failures. So I really want to challenge you on this morning. You know, we all are people who can look back on our lives and see big mistakes that we made in the past, all right? Things that we repented of. We said, God, I'm sorry. I know I messed that up. And we received the grace of God for those mistakes and failures of the past. And maybe you've even noticed how it can generate a tender spot in your heart for people who have made the same mistake as you have made in your past. You know the things that you've asked God for forgiveness, and so you have a special tendency to be careful when you see somebody else that has had the same problem or that makes the same mistake. You're able to be gentle and somewhat bold in bringing the gospel to them. But I want to just point out to you that this same process needs to be in place on a daily basis. So, like, for example, if somebody, like, let's just say you feel insulted, somebody said something that, and even later in the day, you're still irritated because of what somebody said. Recognize that this is the same thing. It is so important to quickly go to God and say, now look, God, I'm confessing my part of this. That comes first, all right? God has something for you in this. And believe me, you do have a part in it. Your sin is involved. Yes, the other person was wrong. They made an error, but you have your share in it. This is a teaching moment for you. This is a place for you to repent, to say, God, I'm sorry for my part in this. Please have mercy on me. Cover me again, God. And then look to this other person and pray for them with a soft spot in your heart, a tender spot in your heart. Pray for that person. Folks, when you do that, the whole climate inside your heart changes. You don't realize how chained up you are because of your own pride and your own bitterness and how unfair it was. But the minute that you give that to God, you ask for forgiveness for your own sins and you pray for that person, the climate changes inside. Suddenly you are very bold because the grace of God in Jesus Christ is working through you. Now you're very bold. You're not all tied up in knots with your own bitterness. There's a calm, quiet spirit, and it makes you bold. You actually find words to say to that person that you would have never been able to say. Why? Because it's the power of God. God is the one who chooses. This is God's enterprise. Let go of all your bitterness and allow the truth of God to work through you, and then you are able to say things that you could never say. You'll be surprised what's going to come out of your mouth. And I just want you to notice, I'll only close with this. When Isaac sends Jacob away, all right, this is the farewell, sending him away. He does not say a single thing about what happened. Did you notice that? Not a thing. Don't try that again, young man. Or I was really hurt by what you did, None of that. That's all gone. That's all repented of. Isaac already had his moment with God. God, I am sorry for all my sin. It's all there. And now, when you look at this incredible moment of a father sending his son out into the world to start his life, what does he do? Folks, it's the very blessing of Abraham. He's launching his son with the blessing of God. And it even has an effect on Esau. Esau is not clueless here. He sees this is a God thing that's being done here. It's incredible. The very language that God spoke to Abraham and that God spoke to Isaac, now Isaac is placing by faith that blessing on his son Jacob and sending him off to carry this blessing of God. Folks, that's you. You're the one who's next in line to pass on this blessing. This must be our daily prayer. God, make me bold. Because I know that it's you that's doing the choosing. Make me very bold and confident so that I am able to put this blessing on the next person.